The world of mobile gaming is very different from the one in PC, and if you are from Europe or the American continent, you might be inclined to dismiss this as a casual fad. But in the rest of the world, mobile games are becoming serious business with very skilled players. The PUBG Mobile Finals have a dance number and everything. Why am I not following this? But this is a channel used to exploiting low-end PCs, and I did an experiment trying to estimate the value of a gaming phone in comparison to that of a PC. However, the comments were mostly recommending that I just buy a Pocophone.
So there is no way that these two dramatically different price phones could be comparable, right? Right?
Let's talk about our contenders. First, the Nubia Red Magic, the budget gaming phone that inspired my first video on this topic and my secondary personal phone. Also my platform of choice for playing World of Warships. Snapdragon 835, 8GB of RAM, €450 still for some reason, RGB strap at the back, and probably the most photogenic phone I have seen in my life. On the other side, yes, after reading a trillion comments, I borrowed what seems to be the enthusiast darling, the Xiaomi Pocophone F1. It packs a Snapdragon 845 with 6GB of RAM at a paradoxically low €300. Wow. And finally, let's throw a flagship in the mix. This is a Galaxy Note 9. While this video was being worked on, the new generation of Galaxy phones was announced and pre-released in Barcelona. But this one is interesting for several reasons. First, its components should be from around the same generation as the Pocophone and therefore be easily comparable. Interestingly enough, two versions of this phone exist, which is something that is kinda hidden in the marketing material, which reinforces the idea that specs are not a selling point for a device like this. The US, Canada, China, Japan and Latin America get a Snapdragon 845 on this phone, the very same as the Pocophone. But here in Europe, we get a Samsung-made Exynos 9810 with 6GB of RAM. Mind you, the difference in SoC does not seem to factor in the usual differences on local pricing.
Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Second, this phone is very expensive, a full flagship high-end product and therefore an interesting thing to pit against the Pocophone. Let's get to the testing. There are several reasons why mobile game comparisons are a bit tricky. Good benchmarking software for mobile is difficult to find. The best one I know and use is GameBench, which requires a desktop connection on boot and has a free license for 30 minutes of measuring per month. The second is that while mobile gaming is advancing at an incredible rate, with close to console quality games coming out, detailed setting screens are still not a thing, and a large group of those games are locked at 30 FPS both to preserve battery and avoid phone overheating, like Asphalt 9, which can perfectly maintain a 30 FPS lock on the higher settings on all the test phones. Games that can do 60 FPS, like my personal favorite World of Warships, are designed in a manner that easily allows hitting that target on higher settings in all test phones. The two very interesting cases for this study are PUBG Mobile and Ark Survival Evolved. Fortnite will technically be another great test bench, but measuring performance on that is a pain because it detects USB debugging or root, which the benchmarking needs, so I'm going to ignore that one. I have talked at length about what you can do to play PUBG Mobile on a low-end phone, and I have also talked a fair bit on the fantastic optimization this game has, so it is a great point to start. The game usually locks to 40 FPS, but I have used the GFX tool from my video in the corner to allow it to go to 60 FPS for more interesting results. Starting with the Red Magic, there was a performance drop when dropping from the plane, which usually has to do with texture streaming and a memory bottleneck. After hitting the ground in an open forested area, which tends to be the heaviest on this game, it can drop as low as 35 FPS, climbing only back to 60 when inside the building. Clearly the 835 has some issues with the game when the FPS cap is removed. Even while in combat, a 40 FPS will clearly be the best choice, so I see why the game tried to enforce that. Mind you, this is a phone that cost €450, 50 euros more than the new model. So given the price and the gamer branding, I initially expected at least better cooling to come through. Let's jump to the phone that is like a freaking $1,000. The memory of the Note 9 is significantly faster than other phones in this comparison, and you can absolutely see how jumping from the plane does not drop the FPS as low as the Red Magic. It almost hits 60 FPS in this part, which I have never seen before in a phone. Once you hit the ground, the results are equally interesting. The Exynos 9810 should be more comparable to the Snapdragon 845, but the actual average seems to be between 50 and 55 in open areas depending on how many elements are there. It holds itself together during combat, but even inside buildings it has trouble getting to 60 FPS. It is a league over the Red Magic, but prepare, because this whole price relationship is about to get a bit weird. Now we try the Pocophone. The plane drops again has a nasty performance drop, which I think confirms the theory of this being a memory speed issue, but where it actually matters, the actual game, it's like 45 FPS at the worst. Fantastic performance during combat. When I look at the game bench results, the Pocophone actually had a higher median than the Note 9. This phone was 300 euros. This is like a third of the price of the Galaxy Note 9. Huh. Ark Survival Evolved is another great place to do some testing. We rarely get ports like this one, and Ark still holds a strong reputation for requiring heavy specs on PC, so you can double that expectation for mobile, and so under higher settings at full resolution it cannot maintain the 30 FPS lock, which makes it very useful as a GPU performance test. Also, it uses Vulkan as its render API, while most games out there use OpenGL. The Red Magic did okay given the extreme settings with a median of 22 FPS. Again, this phone is fine for this game on low spec settings, but setting it up to this sort of torture reveals some interesting data. For example, the phone that cost as much as 2 months of my production budget, the Galaxy Note 9, did not particularly fare better, only hitting a median of 24 FPS. You probably saw this coming, but the cheapest phone by a large margin is again the winner. Reaching 30 FPS on this game at full settings is still pretty much a pipe dream, but it beats the Note 9 by a pretty wide margin. Look, I understand there's a lot of things in play in pricing like battery capacity, screen quality and camera, but the Pocophone seems pretty amazing on those departments as well. How does this pricing make any sense?
The more I think about it, the less sense it makes. It's very obvious to me that I do not understand how this industry works at all. If there was only like an expert that I could summon at will.
Oh hey, I'm Martin, the expert you've asked for. I'm from TechAltar and I analyze the business strategies of tech companies.
How convenient.
What most PC makers do is assemble standardized components like Intel chips, Nvidia graphics, Samsung RAM and Windows into a package. Most of those things are freely available on the market. Anyone, including you, can buy it, and pretty much everyone, including you, know how much those components should cost. Phone makers, on the other hand, sell full packages with components that are much more hidden. This allows them to focus more on things like branding and allow them to get much more creative with pricing.
Thank you to Martin from TechAltar. Make sure you check the full breakdown of the economics of smartphone pricing in his half of the collab on his channel. The world of smartphones is very different, and while I'm definitely starting to get the different mindset that is required for this nascent gaming platform, there is still a lot of stuff that is very confusing. Take phone plan pricing. We're used to paying for a quota of data and call minutes, which we might use completely, but if we only use half during a couple of months, you still have to pay in full. I still do not fully understand the forces that lead to plans being this way, but if you live in the US, you actually have better choices. Like Ting, this video sponsor. Ting is a carrier with no tiers or separate plans. They got cheap rates for data and calling, and you're only charged for what you use. Simple as that. If you use the calculator on their website and put in how many minutes of calling you do and how much data you actually consume in an average month, you might discover, like a lot of people, that your bill is going to be way less than you pay right now, especially if you spend a lot of time on Wi-Fi. They have coverage on both T-Mobile and Sprint, so your phone is likely going to work and you can bring your number with you. Also, they offer support over Discord. That's a fun one. Here is the deal, if you use lowspecgamer.ting.com, you get 25 off your first bill, which apparently is close to an average month off, so it's almost like your first bill is free. Or you can use those $25 as credit for a new phone in the store, so go show them some love. Thank you to them for sponsoring, and you for watching.